The wind whipped through the empty schoolhouse as Emma Clark stared at the eviction notice nailed to the door. 3 days. She had 3 days to vacate the small room behind the classroom that had been her home for the past year. Her hands trembled as she clutched her worn shawl tighter, the fabric doing little against the October chill sweeping across the Montana plains. The school board had made their decision. Without enough students to justify her salary, Copper Ridge no longer needed a teacher. She pressed her palm against the rough wooden door, remembering the children's laughter that once filled these walls. Now there was only silence and the hollow ache of hunger gnawing at her stomach. She'd eaten nothing but stale bread for 2 days, stretching her final coins as far as they would go. The small bundle of possessions inside represented everything she owned in this world: a few dresses, her mother's Bible, and the cameo brooch that had belonged to her grandmother. Perhaps she could sell the brooch in town, though the thought of parting with her last connection to family made her throat tighten. Before we continue with Emma's journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Your support truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? Please let us know in the comments. Emma's worn boots crunched on the frost-covered grass as she made her way toward town. She'd heard the general store might need help, though Mrs. Patterson had made it clear she preferred hiring men who could lift the heavy supply crates. Still, desperation drove Emma forward, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp morning air. She was so lost in worry that she nearly collided with the man standing in the middle of the road. "Pardon me," she gasped, stepping back quickly. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against his canvas coat. Dark hair curled slightly beneath his hat, and when he looked down at her, she found herself caught by intense grey eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully maintained composure. His jaw was strong, marked by a few days' growth of beard, and his hands, calloused and powerful, held the reins of the most magnificent black stallion she'd ever seen. "Miss Clark," he said, his voice deep and measured, "been looking for you." Emma blinked in surprise. "You know who I am?" "Everyone knows the school teacher." He removed his hat, revealing more of a face that was handsome in a rough, weathered way. "Name's Jacob Donovan. I own the Triple D Ranch, about 8 miles west of here." She'd heard of the Donovan Ranch, one of the largest cattle operations in the territory. Rumor had it Jacob Donovan had built his fortune through sheer determination and backbreaking work after coming west with nothing but a horse and a dream. "Mr. Donovan," she acknowledged with a slight nod, confusion furrowing her brow. "I'm afraid I don't understand why you'd be looking for me." He studied her for a long moment, those grey eyes taking in her threadbare shawl, the hollow look that came from too many missed meals, the proud set of her shoulders despite obvious hardship. "Heard the school's closing. Heard you've got nowhere to go." Heat flooded Emma's cheeks. The humiliation of having her circumstances discussed throughout the territory made her want to disappear. "I'll manage, Mr. Donovan. I always do." "I'm sure you would." He shifted his weight, and she noticed a slight stiffness in his movements, as if standing too long caused him pain. "But I have a proposition for you, one that might benefit us both." Emma's guard went up immediately. She'd heard propositions before from men who thought a woman alone was fair game for their base desires. "I'm not interested in—" "I have 2 sons," he interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "Michael's 8, Daniel's 6. Their mother died 2 years ago, bringing our daughter into the world, the baby. She didn't make it either." The pain that flickered across his face was raw and real. "I've been trying to manage the ranch and raise those boys on my own, but I'm failing them. They're running wild and they need—" He trailed off, seeming to struggle with the words. They need a woman's influence, Emma finished quietly, understanding dawning. More than that, they need a mother. He met her eyes directly. You need a home, and I need a mother for my sons. I'm proposing a marriage of convenience, Miss Clark, a business arrangement. The words hung in the cold air between them. Emma's heart pounded as she processed what he was offering. Security, shelter, purpose. But also a life bound to a stranger, raising children that weren't her own. Why me? She asked, needing to understand. There are other women in town, women who want romance and pretty words, he said bluntly. I can't give that. My heart's buried with Catherine, and I won't pretend otherwise. But I've watched you with the children at school, Miss Clark. You're patient, and kind, but firm when needed. You teach them not just reading and arithmetic, but how to think, how to question. That's what my boys need. This is rather sudden, Mr. Donovan. Life out here doesn't allow for long courtships. He gestured toward the eviction notice visible on the schoolhouse door. You have 3 days. I'm offering you a roof over your head, 3 meals a day, and a purpose. In exchange, you care for my sons, manage the household, and bear the Donovan name. It's a fair trade. Emma's mind raced. Marriage without love. Was such a thing even possible? Yet what were her alternatives? She could try to make it to the next town, but winter was coming, and she had no money for stage fare. She could attempt to find work as a domestic servant, subject to the whims of whatever family employed her. Or she could accept this strange offer from a man whose eyes held both strength and sorrow. I would expect separate bedrooms, she said, lifting her chin. This may be a marriage on paper, but I won't be treated as property. For the first time, something that might have been respect flickered in Jacob's expression. You'll have your own room. I won't touch you unless you wish it. You're not property, you're a person, and you'd be my wife. That means something to me, business arrangement or not. And the children? What have you told them? The truth, that I'm looking for a woman who can be a proper mother to them. They're good boys, Miss Clark, but they're hurting. They need someone who can show them it's all right to feel again, to trust again. Emma thought of the eviction notice, of her empty stomach, of the long, uncertain road ahead if she refused. But more than that, she thought of 2 motherless boys who needed guidance and love. She'd always wanted children of her own, though she'd long ago accepted that spinsterhood might be her fate. I'll need to think about it, she said, though her heart was already leaning toward acceptance. Jacob nodded, unsurprised. Take until tomorrow morning. I'll be at the hotel restaurant at 8. If you're there, I'll take it as a yes. If not, he shrugged, I'll wish you well and move on. He mounted his horse with the ease of a man who'd spent more time in the saddle than on foot. And Emma couldn't help but notice the powerful muscles of his thighs, the confident way he controlled the massive animal. There was something undeniably masculine about him, a quiet strength that spoke of a man who faced life's hardships head-on. Miss Clark, he said, looking down at her, whatever you decide, I want you to know I see a woman worth saving. But more than that, I see a woman who's already saved herself time and again. That's the kind of strength my boys need. He rode off, leaving Emma standing in the road with her heart pounding, and her future suddenly, impossibly, changed. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat in her small room, watching moonlight paint silver patterns on the floor as she wrestled with her decision. Marriage to a stranger. Instant motherhood to 2 grieving boys, a life on a remote ranch, miles from town, but also safety, purpose, a home. By the time dawn broke, Emma had made her choice. She wore her best dress, a simple grey wool that had seen better days but was clean and pressed, and walked to the hotel with her head high. Jacob was already there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of coffee, his hat on the chair beside him. When he saw her enter, Something in his expression eased, though he didn't smile. "Miss Clark? Mr. Donovan." She sat across from him, folding her hands on the table to hide their trembling. "I've considered your proposal, and I accept with conditions." He leaned back, studying her. "I'm listening. I'll care for your sons and manage your household, but I expect to be treated as a partner, not a servant. I'll have a say in decisions regarding the boys' education and upbringing, and—" She took a breath. "If at any point this arrangement becomes unbearable for either of us, we'll discuss it honestly, rather than simply suffering in silence." "Fair terms." He extended his hand across the table. "Do we have an agreement, then?" Emma looked at his outstretched hand, large, scarred, capable. A working man's hand that had built something from nothing. She placed her smaller hand in his, feeling the rough calluses, the surprising warmth. "We have an agreement." His fingers closed around hers, firm but not crushing. "Then we'd best get you to the ranch. The Reverend in Copper Ridge can marry us this afternoon if you're willing." "This afternoon?" Emma's heart raced. "So soon? No point in waiting. Besides, the boys are with my foreman, Ben, but I don't like leaving them too long. They get into trouble." 3 hours later, Emma Clark stood in the small church, wearing the same grey dress, speaking vows to a man she'd met only yesterday. The Reverend looked puzzled, but didn't question the hasty union. Such marriages of convenience weren't uncommon on the frontier. Jacob's voice was steady as he promised to honor and keep her, and Emma's barely shook as she made her own vows. When the Reverend said, "You may kiss your bride," Jacob paused, looking at Emma with a question in his eyes. She gave the smallest nod, and he leaned down to brush his lips against hers, brief, chaste, but somehow more intimate than she'd expected. His mouth was warm, and she caught the scent of soap and leather, and something uniquely him. Then it was over, and she was Emma Donovan, wife to a stranger, mother to children she'd never met. The ride to the Triple D Ranch took over an hour. Emma sat beside Jacob on the wagon seat, her few possessions in the back, watching the landscape roll by. The ranch, when it finally came into view, took her breath away. A sprawling house of timber and stone sat in a valley surrounded by rolling hills. Cattle dotted the grasslands, and she could see several outbuildings, a barn, a bunkhouse, what looked like a workshop. "It's beautiful," she said, and meant it. "Catherine designed the house," Jacob said quietly. "She had a vision for what it should be." The name of his first wife hung between them, a ghost that would always be present. Emma wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake, binding herself to a man whose heart belonged to a dead woman. But then the front door burst open and 2 boys came running out, followed by a grizzled older man who must be Ben. "Pa!" the older boy shouted. "You're back!" Jacob climbed down from the wagon and caught both boys up in a fierce hug, and Emma saw the love there, raw and powerful. Whatever else Jacob Donovan might be, he was a devoted father. "Boys, come here." Jacob set them down and turned to help Emma from the wagon. His hands spanned her waist as he lifted her down, and she was acutely aware of his strength. "I want you to meet someone very important." 2 pairs of grey eyes, so like their father's, stared up at her with curiosity and wariness. The older boy, Michael, had Jacob's dark hair and serious expression. Daniel was lighter, with freckles across his nose and a front tooth missing. "This is Mrs. Donovan," Jacob corrected himself. "She's my wife now, your new mother." Silence. The boys looked at each other, then back at Emma, processing this information. "You married her?" Michael asked, his voice flat. "Just like that?" "Just like that," Jacob confirmed. "And I expect you both to treat her with respect." "Emma." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sent an odd flutter through her chest. "These are my sons, Michael and Daniel." Emma crouched down, bringing herself to their level. "I know this is sudden and probably frightening. I won't pretend to replace your mother. No one could do that. But I hope in time we can be friends. I was a teacher, you know. I love reading and arithmetic and exploring. What do you boys love? Daniel, the younger one, perked up. Horses, and Pa's teaching me to rope. I can read already, Michael said defensively. I don't need a teacher. That's wonderful, Emma said genuinely. What are you reading right now? He hesitated. Tom Sawyer. Oh, I love that book. Have you gotten to the part where... She stopped herself. No, I won't spoil it. But maybe sometime you could read to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Something in Michael's expression softened slightly. He didn't agree, but he didn't refuse either. Emma stood, becoming aware of Jacob's gaze on her. When she looked at him, she saw approval in his eyes, and perhaps something else, relief maybe, that she hadn't immediately failed with his sons. Ben, Jacob called to the foreman, help me get Mrs. Donovan's things inside. Ain't much to help with, Ben observed, looking at Emma's single trunk and carpet bag, but there was kindness in his weathered face. Welcome to the Triple D, ma'am. Been needing a woman's touch around here. The house was spacious, but clearly lacking feminine care. The furniture was well made, but austere. Dust-coated surfaces in the corners. The kitchen, while functional, needed a thorough cleaning. But the bones of it were good, wide windows letting in afternoon light, a large fireplace in the main room, solid wooden floors. I'll show you to your room, Jacob said, leading her upstairs. He opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was clearly meant to be the mistress's chamber. A large four-poster bed dominated the space, covered in a handmade quilt. A dresser and wardrobe stood against one wall, and a small writing desk was positioned near the window. This was, Emma began. Catherine's, Jacob finished. Our bedroom. But she's gone, and you're my wife now. It's yours. Emma looked at him in surprise. But I thought separate rooms. You said, my room's across the hall. He gestured. I moved my things months ago. Couldn't sleep in here anymore. Pain flickered across his face. She died in that bed, hemorrhaged after the baby came. I held her while she... He stopped, jaw tight. Anyway, it's yours now. Do what you want with it. He turned to leave, but Emma touched his arm. Jacob. The name felt strange on her tongue. Intimate. I'm sorry for your loss. I can't imagine what that must have been like. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then at her face. It was hell. Still is, most days. But I've got 2 boys who need me to be more than a grieving widower. That's why you're here. I understand. Do you? He searched her face. This isn't going to be easy, Emma. The boys are hurting. He trailed off. I'm not good company. I work from dawn to dusk, trying to keep this place running and trying not to think about what I lost. I can't give you the marriage most women dream of. I'm not most women, Emma said quietly. I've learned that dreams are often just that, dreams. Reality is what we make of it, day by day. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the stoic facade. You're stronger than you look, Mrs. Donovan. I've had to be, Mr. Donovan. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Reckon we should use given names now. We're married, after all. Reckon so, she agreed, then felt heat rise to her cheeks. I'm not used to talking this way. My mother would have scolded me for such informal speech. Your mother raised you back east? Boston. She died when I was 16. My father followed 2 years later. That's when I came west to teach. It seemed like an adventure at the time. And now? Emma looked around the room that had belonged to his dead wife, thought of the 2 wary boys downstairs, considered the man standing before her with grief etched into every line of his face. Now it still is. Just a different kind of adventure. This time he did smile, just slightly. I'll let you settle in. Supper's at 6. Ben's been cooking, but—" He grimaced. "It's edible, barely. Starting tomorrow. The kitchen's yours if you want it." After he left, Emma sat on the edge of the bed, Catherine's bed, and let herself feel the full weight of what she'd done. She was married. She had stepsons. She was responsible for a household on a working ranch. And her husband was a man still in love with a ghost. But as she looked out the window at the vast Montana landscape painted gold by the setting sun, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Fragile as new grass, but hope nonetheless. The first weeks were an adjustment. Emma woke before dawn to prepare breakfast for Jacob and the ranch hands who came in from the bunkhouse. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings, the hard physical labor, the way men ate as if every meal might be their last. The boys tested her boundaries constantly. Michael was sullen and resistant, doing his chores grudgingly and disappearing whenever possible. Daniel was more open, but prone to wild behavior, as if he'd forgotten there were rules at all. "Daniel, no running in the house," Emma would say, only to have him ignore her and race through anyway. "You're not my real ma," Michael informed her coldly when she suggested he do his schoolwork. Emma didn't argue. She simply maintained her expectations, enforced reasonable consequences, and tried to show them through actions that she was there to stay. Jacob was gone most days, working the ranch from dawn to dusk. When he was home, he was exhausted, sitting silently at the dinner table, eating mechanically before retreating to his room or his office. He was polite to Emma, but distant, and she began to wonder if they would ever be more than strangers sharing a house. But slowly things began to change. It started small. One morning, Emma made johnny cakes for breakfast, a recipe her mother had taught her. Daniel's eyes lit up. "These are good." Even Michael ate 3, though he didn't comment. "My grandmother used to make these," Jacob said quietly. "I haven't had them in years." "I'm glad you like them," Emma replied, and their eyes met across the table for just a moment before he looked away. She began cleaning the house in earnest, not just surface tidying, but deep cleaning that made the place feel alive again. She opened windows to air out rooms, washed curtains that hadn't been cleaned in years, organized cupboards and drawers. She found Catherine's things carefully packed away, dresses, letters, a hairbrush, and left them untouched, respecting the grief that still permeated this house. In the evenings, she started reading aloud by the fireplace. At first, the boys ignored her, but gradually they drifted closer. Daniel was the first to actually sit and listen. Michael pretended not to care, but positioned himself where he could hear. One night, reading from Treasure Island, Emma looked up to find all 3 of them, Jacob included, watching her with rapt attention. Jacob sat in his chair, his work-worn hands resting on the arms, his grey eyes reflecting firelight. When he realized she'd noticed him listening, he cleared his throat and stood abruptly. "Good story," he muttered, then headed for his office. But the next night he came to listen again, and the night after that. 3 weeks into the marriage, a storm rolled in with vicious intensity. Emma had just finished putting the boys to bed when thunder crashed so loudly it shook the house. Daniel cried out in fear, and she went to him, sitting on the edge of his bed. "It's just noise," she soothed, stroking his hair. "It can't hurt you in here." "Ma used to sing to us during storms," he whispered. "It helped." Emma's heart clenched. "Would you like me to sing to you?" He nodded, and she began a lullaby her own mother had sung, all through the night. Her voice was soft but true, and she felt Daniel relax against her. From the doorway, she saw Michael standing there listening. "You too," she said gently, patting the bed beside his brother. Michael hesitated, pride warring with need. Finally, he climbed into the bed, and Emma sang to both boys until their breathing deepened into sleep. She was standing to leave when she saw Jacob in the hallway, partially hidden in shadow. How long had he been there? His face was tight with emotion, pain, but also something else. They loved their mother very much, Emma said softly, stepping into the hall and pulling the door nearly closed behind her. She was everything to them. To me. His voice was rough. Sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like. That terrifies me. Emma didn't know what to say to that, so she simply stood there, sharing his pain in silence. "Thank you," he said finally, "for caring for them the way you do, for not trying to replace her, but still being there. They're good boys, Jacob. They're just hurting. We're all hurting." He looked at her directly. "But maybe that's getting a little easier, since you came." The admission seemed to cost him, and Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't a declaration of affection, but it was acknowledgement, connection. "I should check that the barn's secure," he said, breaking the moment. "Storm's getting worse." "Be careful." He nodded and headed for the stairs, but at the top he paused and looked back. "That song you were singing, it was beautiful. You have a lovely voice, Emma." Then he was gone, leaving her standing in the dim hallway with her heart beating faster than it should. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the storm having passed. Emma was in the kitchen making breakfast when Jacob came in from the barn, his shirt torn and his arm bleeding. "Good Lord, what happened?" She rushed to him. "Damn fool horse spooked during the night, kicked through a board. I was fixing it and caught my arm on a nail." He looked at the gash with annoyance rather than concern. "It's fine." "It's not fine. It needs cleaning. Sit down." She pulled out a chair and pushed him into it, then fetched water and clean cloths. "I can do it myself," he protested. "Hush." Emma began cleaning the wound carefully, aware of how close she was standing to him, aware of the heat of his body, the way his jaw clenched when she touched a particularly sore spot. "Go slow. It hurts, I know, but it needs to be done properly, or it'll fester." "Yes, ma'am," he said, and there was the faintest hint of humor in his voice. She worked in silence, focusing on her task, but she could feel his eyes on her face. When she glanced up, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're good at this," he said, gentle. "I had to tend to many scraped knees and bumped heads as a teacher." She wrapped a clean bandage around his arm, trying to ignore how solid his muscles felt beneath her hands. "There, keep it clean and dry." "Emma." His hand caught hers before she could move away. "I'll die before I hurt you, you know that, don't you?" The words were fierce, unexpected. Emma looked into his eyes and saw something that made her breath catch, not just gratitude, but genuine care, perhaps even the beginning of something deeper. "I know," she whispered. He released her hand slowly, seeming reluctant. "Thank you. You're welcome." The moment stretched between them, fragile and new. Then Daniel burst into the kitchen demanding breakfast, and the spell was broken, but something had shifted, a wall beginning to crack. Over the following weeks, Emma noticed more changes. Jacob began coming home earlier, helping the boys with their chores, teaching them ranch skills, but also listening to their questions, engaging with them more. He started staying for the evening readings, sometimes adding his own commentary or answering the boys' questions about ranch life. And with Emma, he was different too. He asked about her day, listened when she talked about the boys' progress, sought her opinion on household matters. Small things, but meaningful. One afternoon, she was struggling to move a heavy pot in the kitchen when he appeared and lifted it easily, setting it where she needed it. "Thank you," she said, wiping her forehead. "I should have asked for help." "You never ask for help," he observed. "Why is that?" Emma considered the question. "I've been on my own for so long. I learned to depend only on myself." "You're not on your own anymore." He stepped closer, and she became acutely aware of how much larger he was than her, how his presence seemed to fill the room. You have me, the boys, this place. You can lean on us, Emma, on me. Can I? The question came out more vulnerable than she'd intended. This is still a business arrangement, isn't it? Something flickered in his eyes. Regret, perhaps. It started that way. And now? He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek, rough and warm. Now I'm not so sure what it is. Emma's heart hammered. Jacob! Pa! Pa! Come quick! Michael's shout from outside broke the moment. Jacob pulled back, the shutters coming down over his expression again. Duty calls, he said, and strode out. Emma pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her racing heart. What was happening between them? Was she falling for her husband of convenience? Was he feeling something too? Or was she imagining it? She didn't have long to ponder. That evening at supper, Michael made an announcement. There's a dance in town next Saturday for Harvest Festival. Everyone goes. That sounds nice, Emma said carefully. Will you go, Pa? Daniel asked. We never go to dances anymore. Jacob's face closed off. I don't dance. You used to, Michael said quietly. With Ma. The silence that fell was painful. Emma saw Jacob's hands clench into fists on the table, saw the grief wash over him fresh and raw. That was before, he said finally. Things are different now. But we got a new Ma, Daniel said innocently. You could dance with her. Daniel, that's enough. Jacob's voice was sharp, and the boy's face crumpled. Jacob stood abruptly. I have work to do. He left, and Emma was alone with two confused, hurt boys. She took a breath, choosing her words carefully. Your father misses your mother very much. Dancing reminds him of happy times with her, and sometimes remembering happy times hurts worse than anything. Do you understand? But you're here now, Michael said, and there was accusation in his voice. Aren't you supposed to make things better? I'm trying, Emma said honestly, but I can't fix everything. Some hurts take a very long time to heal. Later that night, Emma found Jacob in the barn, brushing down his horse with more force than necessary. She approached cautiously. The boys didn't mean to upset you. I know. He didn't stop brushing. I overreacted. You miss her. That's not a crime, Jacob. Isn't it? He finally looked at her, and the anguish in his face was devastating. I married you. I made vows to you, but I can't stop. He turned away. You deserve better than a man whose heart is in a grave. Emma felt her own heart crack a little. I went into this marriage with my eyes open. I knew you loved her. I'm not asking you to stop. Then what are you asking for? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe just to let me in a little, to let us be more than strangers going through the motions. We don't have to dance at festivals, Jacob, but we could at least be friends. He was quiet for a long moment, then set down the brush and turned to face her fully. You're a remarkable woman, Emma Donovan. Patient, kind, strong. Catherine would have liked you. It was the first time he'd spoken his dead wife's name to her directly, and Emma knew it was significant. Tell me about her, she said softly, if you want to. And there, in the quiet barn with horses shifting in their stalls, Jacob talked about Catherine, how they'd met, how she'd dreamed of building something lasting in the West, how she'd loved their sons with fierce devotion. He talked until his voice grew hoarse, and Emma listened, letting him share his grief. When he finally fell silent, she reached out and took his hand, just held it, offering comfort without words. Thank you, he said roughly, for listening, for not being angry that I can't give you what you deserve. Jacob, look at me. When he did, she squeezed his hand. I didn't come here expecting grand romance. I came expecting hard work, loneliness, and the challenge of winning over two hurt boys. Everything else, Your kindness, the moments of connection, this friendship we're building, that's more than I hoped for. You don't want more? He searched her face. No woman wants to be second choice. Maybe I did once, she admitted. But I've learned that life rarely gives us our first choices. We make do with what we have and find happiness in unexpected places. I'm content, Jacob, truly. She wasn't sure if she was lying or not. Contentment seemed a poor word for what she felt, this strange mix of satisfaction in her daily life and yearning for something more. But it was the truth he needed to hear. "You're one hell of a woman," he said, and there was genuine admiration in his voice. "And you're a good man doing the best you can. That's enough." The night of the harvest festival arrived. Despite Jacob's insistence he wouldn't attend, Emma and the boys went riding into town in the wagon. Michael and Daniel were excited, running off to join other children as soon as they arrived. Emma stood on the edges of the gathering, watching couples dance, feeling more alone than she had in weeks. She'd grown accustomed to her life at the ranch, to the daily routines and small moments of connection with Jacob. Being here, seeing other couples laugh and dance together, reminded her of what her marriage lacked. "Mrs. Donovan." Emma turned to find Tom Harrison, a neighboring rancher, smiling at her. "Would you care to dance?" She hesitated. "I'm not sure that's appropriate. My husband isn't here," Tom finished. "No offense meant, ma'am, but it seems a shame for a pretty lady to stand alone all evening." "One dance?" Emma glanced at the boys, saw they were safe and having fun, and decided why not. She was married but not dead. One dance wouldn't hurt anything. Tom was a competent dancer, leading her through a simple waltz. They were halfway through the song when Emma saw him, Jacob, standing at the edge of the crowd, his expression thunderous. Her heart leapt. He'd come. Why had he come? The song ended, and Emma thanked Tom politely before excusing herself. She made her way toward Jacob, noting how his jaw was clenched, his hands fisted at his sides. "You came," she said, surprised and pleased. "Figured the boys would want to see me here." His eyes tracked Tom Harrison as the man rejoined his friends. "Didn't realize you'd be entertaining other men's company." There was an edge to his voice that made Emma's spine straighten. "I was dancing. It's a dance, Jacob. That's what people do." "You're my wife, in name only," she reminded him, something sharp rising in her chest. "You made that very clear. A business arrangement, remember, so don't you dare stand there and act like a jealous husband when you've barely spoken to me beyond necessities for days." His eyes widened slightly. She'd never spoken to him this way before. "Emma, no?" She cut him off, months of careful patience finally fraying. "You don't get to ignore me. They keep me at arm's length, then get angry when I try to have one moment of normalcy. You don't get to have it both ways." She started to walk away, needing air, needing space, but his hand caught her wrist, stopping her. "You're right," he said roughly. "You're absolutely right. I'm a damn hypocrite." Emma turned back, surprised by the admission. "Seeing you with him." Jacob shook his head. "Something in me I didn't like it, couldn't stand it, and I don't have a right to feel that way, not when I've been holding you at arm's length like you said." "Then why did you come tonight?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because the boys asked me to, because they're happy now, happier than they've been since their mother died, and that's because of you. And because—" He paused. "Because I missed you. I was home alone, and I missed you, Emma, and that scared the hell out of me." Her breath caught. "Jacob, dance with me." It came out more command than request, and he seemed to realize it, softening his tone. "Please, let me try." Emma looked into his eyes and saw vulnerability there, fear mixed with determination. Slowly she nodded. He led her onto the dance floor as a new song began, something slow and sweet. His hand settled at her waist, large and warm, and she placed hers on his shoulder, feeling the solid muscle beneath her palm. His other hand engulfed hers, calloused and strong. "I haven't danced in 2 years," he admitted as they began to move. "I might step on your feet. I'll risk it." They moved together, awkward at first, but gradually finding a rhythm. Emma was hyper-aware of every point of contact, his hand at her waist, burning through the fabric of her dress, their clasped hands, the scant inches between their bodies. She could smell him, soap and leather and something earthy and male. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his breath stirring her hair. "For being distant, for not knowing how to do this, be a husband again, even if it's not, even if it's different than before. You don't have to apologize for grieving, Jacob. Maybe not for grieving, but for making you feel like you didn't matter, that I should apologize for." He pulled back slightly to look at her face. "You matter, Emma. More than I wanted you to, maybe. But you do." Her heart raced. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this isn't just a business arrangement anymore. Not for me. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's more than that." His hand tightened at her waist. "And seeing you with Harrison made me realize I don't want other men looking at you the way he was. I want—" "What do you want?" Emma whispered. "I want you to be my wife. Really my wife. I want—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "I'm not ready to love again, Emma. I don't know if I ever will be. But I care about you. I trust you. I like having you in my home, in my life. That's not nothing." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't poetry or romance, but it was honest, and coming from Jacob, it was significant. "It's not nothing," Emma agreed softly. "It's a start." His eyes searched hers. "Is that enough for you?" Emma considered the question carefully. Was it enough? To be cared for but not loved, to be trusted but perhaps never truly desired, to live with a man whose heart would always belong, at least in part, to a dead woman. But then she thought of the alternative, the loneliness, the uncertainty, the constant struggle just to survive. She thought of Michael's slowly warming smiles, of Daniel's laughter. She thought of quiet mornings in the kitchen with Jacob, of evening readings by the fire, of moments like this where connection flickered between them like flame. "It's enough," she said. "For now, it's enough." Relief flooded his face. The song ended, but he didn't release her immediately. They stood there, holding each other, surrounded by other couples, but lost in their own moment. "Emma," he said, his voice low, "could I?" He seemed to struggle, then gave up on words and simply leaned down, his intention clear. Emma's eyes fluttered closed as his lips met hers. This kiss was nothing like the brief peck at their wedding. This was real, warm, seeking, asking a question she wasn't sure how to answer. His mouth moved against hers with surprising gentleness for such a rough man, and she found herself kissing him back, her hand sliding from his shoulder to the back of his neck. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing harder. I should probably get the boys home," Emma managed. "Probably," Jacob agreed, but he didn't move, his forehead resting against hers. "In a minute." They stood that way for a long moment, holding each other, breathing the same air, something new and fragile growing between them. The ride home was quiet but not uncomfortable. The boys chatted about the festival, about the games they'd played, and the food they'd eaten, while Emma sat beside Jacob on the wagon seat, acutely aware of the warmth of his thigh pressed against hers. After putting the boys to bed, Emma was preparing to retire to her own room when she found Jacob waiting in the hallway. "I don't want you to misunderstand," he said without preamble. What I said tonight about you being my real wife, I meant it, but I won't push you into anything you're not ready for. We can take this slow." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest at his consideration. "Slow is good. I'm not experienced, Jacob. I've never." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You're an innocent." She felt her cheeks heat. "Yes. Then we'll definitely take it slow." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture that was becoming familiar. "Good night, Emma." "Good night." But as she lay in bed that night, sleep was elusive. Her body was aware in ways it had never been before, her skin seeming to remember everywhere he'd touched. She thought of his kiss, of the careful way he'd held her, of the promise in his eyes. Maybe, she thought, this marriage could become something real after all. The next few weeks brought a subtle shift in their relationship. Jacob began seeking her out during the day, stopping by the house for coffee mid-morning, asking her opinion on ranch matters. He started sitting closer during evening readings, their shoulders touching. Small touches became more frequent, his hand at the small of her back as they walked, fingers brushing when passing plates at dinner. The boys noticed and seemed pleased by the change. Daniel became more openly affectionate with Emma, hugging her freely. Michael, while still reserved, began to confide in her about his worries and dreams. "Do you think Pa's going to be happy again?" he asked her one afternoon while they worked on his arithmetic. "I think he's getting there," Emma said honestly. "Why do you ask?" He smiles now. He didn't used to smile. Michael looked at her seriously. "I think that's because of you." Emma's throat tightened with emotion. "Your father is a strong man who's been through something terrible. But yes, I hope I'm helping. You boys are helping too, just by being yourselves." "I was mean to you at first," Michael admitted. "I'm sorry. You were protecting your mother's memory. That's not mean, that's love. And I would never want you to forget her or stop loving her. But we can love you too, right? That's okay." Emma had to blink back tears. "That's more than okay, sweetheart. That's wonderful." Michael surprised her by hugging her then, the first real embrace he'd given her. Emma held him tight, feeling like she'd finally truly become their mother. That evening, she was washing dishes when Jacob came up behind her, his hands settling on her waist. She startled, nearly dropping a plate. "Sorry," he murmured, but he didn't move away. "Didn't mean to scare you." "It's all right." Emma set down the plate carefully, aware of his solid warmth at her back. "Did you need something?" "Yeah." His arms slid around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. He rested his chin on top of her head. "This, just this." Emma's heart raced, but she let herself relax into his embrace, her hands settling over his arms. They stood that way for several minutes, not speaking, just being together. "I like holding you," Jacob said quietly. "Is that all right?" "Yes." Emma's voice came out breathy. "It's very all right." "Good." His arms tightened slightly. "Because I plan to do it more often." True to his word, Jacob became more openly affectionate. He took her hand when they walked. He kissed her forehead when passing. He held her each night after the boys went to bed, just standing in the kitchen or sitting on the porch, arms around each other, talking quietly about their days. But he never pushed for more, and Emma appreciated his patience even as her own desires began to grow. She found herself watching him work, admiring the play of muscles in his arms and back. She thought about that kiss at the dance, wondered what it would be like to kiss him again, to be truly intimate with him. One night, gathered courage, she knocked on his bedroom door. "Come in," he called, sounding surprised. She entered to find him sitting on the edge of his bed in just his trousers, preparing to sleep. Lamplight painted his bare chest, revealing scars she'd never seen, the powerful build of a man who worked hard every day. His hair was slightly damp, as if he'd just washed. "Emma?" He stood, concern in his eyes. Is something wrong? No, I just... She twisted her hands together. I wanted to talk to you. All right. He gestured to the chair by his bed. Sit. But Emma remained standing. We've been married for nearly 3 months now, I'm aware. And you've been very patient, very respectful of our agreement about separate rooms. Jacob's jaw tightened. Are you saying you want me to be less patient? I'm saying... Emma took a breath. I'm saying that I've come to care for you, Jacob, more than I expected to, and I think you care for me too. And we're married, and I don't want separate rooms anymore. The silence stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. Jacob's eyes had darkened, his breathing slightly uneven. Emma, you need to be very clear about what you're saying, because if you're saying what I think you're saying, I want to be your wife, she said firmly. In every way, I want you to make love to me. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands coming up to cup her face. Are you sure? Once we cross this line, there's no going back. I'm sure. She placed her hands over his. I want this. I want you. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, his tongue sliding against hers in a way that made her knees weak. She clung to his shoulders, feeling the heat of his skin through her nightgown. God, Emma, he breathed against her mouth. I've been wanting this, wanting you, trying so hard to be patient, to not rush you. You've been perfect, she assured him, but I'm ready now. He picked her up, and she gasped, wrapping her arms around his neck as he carried her to the bed. He laid her down gently, following her down, his weight settling over her in a way that felt right, safe, thrilling, all at once. We'll go slow, he promised, his voice rough. I know this is your first time. I'll try not to hurt you, but it might hurt a little at first. You tell me if it's too much, if you want to stop. I trust you, Emma whispered. What followed was tender and occasionally awkward as they learned each other's bodies. Jacob was patient despite his obvious desire, taking time to pleasure her, to ensure she was ready before finally joining their bodies. There was pain when he entered her, sharp and unexpected, and she couldn't help the small cry that escaped. I'm sorry, he breathed, holding still. Go slow. I know it hurts. Just breathe. I've got you. He stayed motionless until her body adjusted, until the pain faded to something else. A fullness, a stretch, and then finally, pleasure. When she began to move beneath him, he groaned and matched her rhythm, and they moved together towards something Emma had never experienced before. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both breathing hard, skin damp with sweat. Jacob pulled her close, kissing her temple. You all right? He asked. Better than all right, Emma assured him, feeling deliciously languid. That was? Yeah, he agreed. It was. She turned in his arms to face him. Jacob, I know you said you weren't ready to love again. I'm not asking you to love me the way you loved Catherine. But I want you to know I love you. I didn't plan to, but I do. His eyes widened, then softened with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Emma, you don't have to say it back, she interrupted. I just wanted you to know. He was quiet for a moment, his hand coming up to stroke her hair. What I feel for you. It's different than what I felt for Catherine. She was my first love, my youth. What I feel for you is steadier, deeper, built on respect and partnership and genuine affection. I don't know if that's love, but it's real, and it matters. That's enough, Emma said, meaning it. That's more than enough. Winter settled over the ranch, bringing snow and cold. Emma had never been happier. Her days were full, managing the household, teaching the boys their lessons, working alongside Jacob on ranch business. Her nights were full too, spent in Jacob's arms, learning the language of physical love. But their peace was shattered on a cold December morning when a rider arrived bearing news that made Jacob's face go hard. "Marcus Trent's back," Ben reported, standing in the kitchen. "He's claiming rights to the water rights on the North 40. Says he has documentation." "Like hell he does," Jacob growled. "That land has been Donovan property for 10 years. Emma had heard of Marcus Trent, a wealthy landowner who'd tried to buy the Triple D several times, always refused. Apparently, he'd decided to take what he couldn't buy. Over the next weeks, the situation escalated. Trent's men tried to divert the creek that fed the Donovan cattle. Fences were cut, cattle went missing. Jacob and his hands were constantly on patrol, tensions running high. Emma worried about him constantly. He was exhausted, on edge, and she could see the toll it was taking. "This can't continue," she said one night. "Surely there's some legal recourse." "The nearest judge is in Helena, and Trent has him in his pocket," Jacob said bitterly. "Out here, might makes right, Emma. That's just how it is." "Then we fight with might," she said firmly. "We protect what's ours." He looked at her with surprise and something that might have been pride. "This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. This is my home. Those boys are my sons, and you're my husband. That makes it my fight. Jacob Donovan." He pulled her into a fierce kiss. "God, I love you," he said against her mouth. Emma pulled back, eyes wide. "What?" "I love you," he repeated, seeming as surprised as she was. "I didn't think I could love again. But I do. I love your strength, your kindness, the way you've made this house a home. I love how you love my boys. I love—" He touched her face gently. "I love you, Emma." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Say it again. I love you." She kissed him desperately, pouring everything she felt into it. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "We'll fight together," she said. "Together. Together." He agreed. 2 days later, everything came to a head. Trent himself rode onto Donovan property with 12 men, armed and ready for trouble. Emma was in the house with the boys when she heard the commotion. Looking out, she saw Jacob and his hands facing down Trent's larger force. "Stay here," she told the boys firmly, then grabbed Jacob's rifle from above the fireplace. "Emma, no!" Michael grabbed her arm. "It's dangerous." "Your father needs help." She looked at both boys seriously. "Stay inside, lock the door, and no matter what happens, don't come out until one of us comes for you. Understand?" They nodded, frightened but trusting. Emma walked out onto the porch, rifle held competently. Jacob had taught her to shoot over the past months. The assembled men turned to look at her, surprise on many faces. "Mrs. Donovan," Trent drawled, "this doesn't concern you. Get back inside." "Everything concerning my husband concerns me," Emma said evenly. "You're trespassing on Donovan land. Leave now or face the consequences." Trent laughed. "You threatening me, little lady?" "I'm informing you of the law, Mr. Trent. This is private property. You have no legal claim here, and you know it." "Emma, get back inside," Jacob said urgently. "No." She descended the porch steps, standing beside her husband. "We stand together, remember?" Jacob's jaw tightened, but she saw respect in his eyes. He turned back to Trent. "You heard my wife. Get off my land." "Or what?" Trent sneered. "You'll shoot all of us? You're outnumbered, Donovan." "Maybe." Jacob's hand moved to his pistol. "But I guarantee you'll be the first to fall. Question is whether you want to risk it." The tension was thick enough to cut. Emma's heart pounded, but she kept her rifle steady, aimed at Trent's chest. Then hoofbeats sounded, and everyone turned to see more riders approaching, neighboring ranchers, men Jacob had helped over the years coming to his aid. "Heard you might need some help, Donovan," called out Tom Harrison, the man Emma had danced with at the festival. "We look after our own around here," another rancher added. Now Trent's men were outnumbered. The wealthy landowner's face darkened with anger, but he was smart enough to know when he was beaten. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes, it is," Jacob said calmly. You try this again, and every rancher in the territory will know you for a land thief. Good luck doing business then." Trent wheeled his horse and rode off, his men following. Emma let out a shaky breath, lowering her rifle. "That was incredibly foolish," Jacob said, turning to her. "That was incredibly brave," Tom Harrison corrected, riding closer. "Your wife has more courage than most men, Donovan. You're a lucky man." "Don't I know it?" Jacob said, pulling Emma close despite their audience. "You scared 10 years off my life, woman." "We stand together," she reminded him. "You said so yourself." "So I did." He kissed her forehead. "So I did." That night, after thanking the neighboring ranchers and getting the boys calmed down and to bed, Emma and Jacob lay together in their room. "I could have lost you today," he said quietly, holding her tight. "When I saw you come out with that rifle, my heart stopped. But you didn't lose me. We're fine. We're all fine. Because you were brave and smart and incredible." He pulled back to look at her face. "When did I get so lucky?" "The day you found a desperate woman outside a schoolhouse and saw something worth saving," Emma said. "I did save you," Jacob agreed, "but you saved me too, Emma. You brought my boys back to life. You brought me back to life. You made this house a home again." "We saved each other," Emma corrected. "That's what love does. It rescues us from our loneliness, our pain, our fear. Together." "Together," he agreed and kissed her deeply. Their lovemaking that night was different, urgent, intense, driven by the knowledge of how close they'd come to losing everything. Afterward, Emma lay in Jacob's arms, listening to his heartbeat, feeling utterly content. "I never thought I'd be happy again," Jacob said into the darkness. "After Catherine died, I thought that part of my life was over. I married you out of desperation, out of necessity, but somewhere along the way, you became necessary for a whole different reason." "What reason?" "You became my heart," he said simply. "I love you, Emma Donovan, more than I thought possible." "I love you too," she whispered. "Always." Epilogue. 2 years later, Emma stood on the porch of the Triple D ranch house, watching her family. Jacob was teaching Michael how to properly rope a calf, his deep voice patient and encouraging. Daniel was helping by running after the calf and making it bolt, much to Michael's annoyance and Jacob's amusement. In her arms, baby Catherine, named for the woman who'd come before, gurgled happily, her grey eyes so like her father's, watching the scene with fascination. Emma had been terrified during the pregnancy, knowing how Jacob's first wife had died. But with a doctor present and Jacob holding her hand, she'd safely delivered a healthy daughter 5 months ago. The joy on Jacob's face when he'd held his baby girl for the first time had made Emma cry. "She looks like you," he'd said in wonder. "Same nose, same chin, she's going to be beautiful." "She has your eyes," Emma had pointed out, "and your stubborn streak, I suspect." Now, watching her husband with their children, because Michael and Daniel were as much hers as little Catherine was, Emma marveled at how much life could change. She'd been a desperate, hungry woman with nowhere to go. She'd married a grieving widower in a business arrangement, expecting nothing more than survival. Instead, she'd found love, real, deep, transformative love that had healed them both. Jacob looked up and caught her watching. His face lit up with that smile, the one reserved just for her, and he handed the rope to Michael before striding over. "What are you thinking about, wife?" he asked, climbing the porch steps and wrapping his arms around both her and the baby. "How happy I am," Emma said honestly. "How grateful I am that you saw me that day outside the schoolhouse." "I saw a woman who needed help," he said. "I had no idea I was looking at my future, at the person who would save me right back." "You need a home, and I need a mother for my sons." Emma quoted his proposal from that long-ago day. "That's what you said." "I was an idiot," Jacob laughed. "What I should have said was, you need love, and I need someone to teach me how to love again." But it worked out anyway, Emma said, leaning into his warmth. Yeah, he agreed, kissing the top of her head. It worked out perfectly. They stood together, watching their boys play, holding their daughter, completely content in the life they'd built. Emma had come west, seeking adventure, found desperation, accepted a marriage of convenience, and ended up with the greatest treasure of all, a family, a home, and a love that had grown from the hardest soil into something beautiful and lasting. Together, just as it should be. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Jacob and Emma's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.